Morning, Trinity. Everybody. My name is Josh Mandrell, and I get to share with you this morning while our associate pastor here at Trinity and the refuge pastor, Leslie Stevens, is in Scotland this morning and this week. But you will get to see and hear from her live at the end of the service in a really cool way. So look forward to that. This morning, I'm going to challenge you to think of something. I want you to think of a time where you desired to achieve something greatly, where you pursued something with reckless abandon. You gave it all of your heart, your soul, all of your time, maybe your money. You loved it so much and you went after it. Thinking about that is easy for me. It takes me back to when I was 10 years old and I was playing baseball. So in my hometown, my age bracket, my classmates, we had a really good baseball team every summer. We had some dads that actually played minor league baseball. We had some dads that coached at high levels of baseball competition. My dad didn't play minor league baseball or coach at high levels of baseball competition, but he thought he did sometimes. I don't know if you understand that a little bit. But he had me and my brother in the batting cages every day, and we played a lot. And so the summer was over, and they picked an all-star team, and me and my brother got picked for the all-star team. And our all-star team went to the district tournament and won it, went to sectionals, and then went to the state tournament. And so we all piled in minivans and went up north, and you had your names written in that paint on the windows of the minivans. You got to stay in a hotel and swim, and everybody piled in the jacuzzi. It's a great experience for a 9 and 10-year-old. And so we went to the competition, the season was over, and then we had an awards banquet. And everybody on the team got a really cool trophy that we were all really excited about. And then we got surprised. Our parents were in on it, but we didn't know anything about it. We got these royal blue Mustang All-Star jackets. And so this was everything to us. We got them oversized because that was the style. And so everybody put on their jackets, and we were really excited about it. That August, a few weeks later, school started. Really hot in August, but every one of us wore our jackets to school, so everybody knew that we were part of that championship team. It made you an instant chick magnet because you had that all-star jacket. And so 25 years later, I called up my grandma this week for her to go to the closet and find that jacket that I haven't worn in 25 years. It actually, about 2 weeks later, after we wore them all around school for 2 weeks, everybody put it in a closet, and we don't think much about these jackets anymore, but we found it. It's got the World Series patch on it, and so I am going to attempt to wear this jacket this morning. It actually fits a little better than I thought it would. I'm sucking in right now, by the way. There we go. It's kind of suffocating right now. I don't know, you can be an unbiased observer, but it looks like I outgrew this jacket a little bit. Sometimes, though, I don't know if you're with me, but sometimes we do outgrow the things that we've tried so hard to achieve. Those dreams, those goals that we thought were lifelong really weren't lifelong. They were pretty temporary. Maybe those things that you were thinking about that you pursued with reckless abandon are not as important anymore. Maybe you have some of those things right now. I think we all have a desire to achieve. Something within us has a desire to care passionately about something or someone, to be devoted at a very deep level. And so our question this morning is, does Jesus say anything about this? And I believe he actually does. And so we're going to go to the book of Matthew. So Matthew was written by Jesus' disciple, one of his eyewitnesses, Matthew, who wrote down a lot of stuff that Jesus said, miracles he performed, to pass on, and maybe even to pass on to us this morning. So Matthew chapter 6 is part of this collection of stories known as the Sermon on the Mount. It's Jesus' messages to his people. And so I'm going to start with verse 19. You're going to have the words on the screen up there. Jesus says this, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and vermin destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moth and vermin do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal." So let's break down these terms for a second. Treasure on earth. Basically, he's kind of referring to my royal blue all-star jacket or the trophies in my life. Things that we pursue but have no eternal value, materialistic stuff. And so that can be different for all of us, and at different times in our lives, we might have those treasures on earth. Maybe in high school it was being student body president, or for me, trying to be valedictorian, or maybe it's being captain of the football team, which that actually was not one of my pursuits. Shocking, I know. But that could be one of yours. And so maybe it's being a part of the cheerleading squad. Maybe you get older and maybe it's to have a child. Like that is your sole ambition. It's what you're obsessed with. Or to get married, or to succeed, to get this career, to finish this class, to get that job. That is your pursuit. To have your fantasy football team win the league, win the year. Maybe it's to land that 13-point buck during deer season. All of us have different things. The problem, Jesus would say in this passage, with treasures on earth is that they're temporary. Moth and vermin destroy them, and thieves break in and steal them. So then what are treasures in heaven? And so Jesus, if you look at that, he's really talking about matters of character, having a Christ-like character, having a selfless type of love, having love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and goodness and faithfulness and gentleness and self-control, things that have eternal value, that moth or rust or vermin cannot destroy, that thieves will never be able to steal from you. And he says, store those up instead. So he goes on to say, and this is where it gets really good. The next sentence, he says this: for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Now, Jesus uses the word heart a lot, and so it's not necessarily meaning this thing with four chambers and pulmonary artery and valve that people have atrial fibrillation. That's heart, but that's not what he means. What he really means is the control center of your personality. That's what that can be translated into. The control center, or interpreted, the control center of your personality. So if you're a feeler, you process things, you make decisions a lot by your feelings. You could say, where your treasure is, there your feelings will be also. If you're a thinker, Jesus is saying, where your treasure is, there your mind will be also. And so the question this morning is, where is my treasure? Where is our heart? Where is our mind? Where are our priorities? Where do we find our security? Now, it sounds like an easy question, but it can be kind of hard because only you know where your heart is, where your treasure is. No one can see your motives. Somebody might say, well, I'm at church, so obviously that's saying that my treasure is in God and things eternal. I don't know about you, but I've been to church for many reasons other than God. So my personal motives and reasons for doing something are only known by me. Now, maybe you might say, well, I'm trying to think about where my priority is, but it's kind of hard for me. So maybe there are road markers to determine whether we're pursuing the things eternal, the cross, or whether we're pursuing our trophies, pursuing our idols. Idols could be another word for trophy. Idols is a scary word for a lot of us, and we think idols, and we think of maybe if you grew up in church, you remember Moses coming from Mount Sinai and the golden calf, and that was an idol. But idols, this is God's definition, not mine. Idols are anything that come before God. So they can be people, they can be things, they can be achievements. And so what is it? Is there a road marker to say whether I'm pursuing the eternal or pursuing the earthly, the idols in my life, the trophies in my life? Maybe you could say, how do you spend your time? Your free time, where is it spent? Maybe that's a road marker on which road we're on. Maybe it's money. Where does my free money go? Maybe it's, are you stressed? Is there no time for God? Maybe that could be a sign that there's some kind of idol there. Lacking joy and peace, and I didn't say, nothing bad's happening in your life, but truly deep down in your heart, lacking joy and peace that only God can provide. Maybe there's something standing in the way for us receiving that. Now, When I was in medical school, we had these study groups, and we'd go to the library and get in this room, and I used to study with these 3 other guys. And so we were sitting there studying, and one of the guys in our group, who we considered a friend, started sharing some major crazy stuff going on in his life. And we hadn't heard any of this before, and he walked out, and we started discussing how we could help him. And so I started saying, well, I wish I could do this, and I wish that I was that, and I can't believe I wasn't here for him when that happened, and I need to do better with this, and I just really wish that I could be more Christ-like for him. And then another guy in the group said, Josh, what you described, you're not trying to be Christ-like for him. You're trying to be Christ to him. And Josh, you ain't Christ. You ain't a Savior. You can point him to the Savior, but you can't be the Savior. And I started thinking about that a little bit, and not less than 2 hours later, I was driving home from school, and I got a call from one of my other friends. And she called to talk about her fiance at the time, who was one of my best friends. And she started a conversation, I need your advice. And then she started going through this whole list of things that he was doing wrong. Things that he should be doing that he wasn't, or things that he shouldn't be doing and he was. And she went on and on, stuff like, every time I call him, his phone's off, he doesn't return text messages, I posted that on Facebook 2 days ago and he hasn't liked it yet, and we went to church on Sunday morning and Sunday night, and then he didn't go with me on Wednesday night, and on, and she really had unreasonable expectations, right? Y'all know there's a difference between reasonable expectations and unreasonable expectations. And so she had unreasonable expectations and went on and on and on, and she didn't pause to take a breath. Somewhere in there, she said she was looking for advice, right? Y'all know that sometimes people say they want advice, but they just want to talk, and they just want you to listen. That's okay. But she went on, and then she said, I just wish that he was more Christ-like. And it clicked. I said, you know what? It doesn't sound like you want him to be Christ-like. It sounds like you want him to be Christ. And he ain't Christ. He is not your Savior. He's human. He's going to make mistakes. He's going to mess up. There's only one person that can be there to answer every phone call and listen to every plea and every prayer, and that's God. And so this morning, I would say sometimes people can be idols for us, can try to take the place of God. I mean, something is amazing when you're in a relationship, engaged, married, and you're pursuing God together, but that's not a substitute for one of those people to be God for you, if that makes sense. At some point, husbands can be husbands and wives can be wives, and God can be God. He can be the focus. He can be the pursuit. Maybe you're a parent and I am not a parent. I have a couple of dogs, which isn't the same thing, I don't guess, but don't tell them that. And so you can be a parent and love your child like desperately. I can't imagine how hard it is to take your kid to school for the first time, drop them off at kindergarten for the first time, or maybe take them and drop them off at their dorm room, or they leave the house for the first time. That's got to be hard because you love them. But that is not supposed to be incapacitating. You see, sometimes we can love our kids more than we love God. They can become false gods. They can become idols. Maybe you're sitting here and you have this deep prayer request that you pray all the time, which is amazing. But I can speak from experience. Sometimes my prayer request becomes more important than the God that I'm praying it to. I become obsessed with the request and not obsessed with my God. Maybe it's even this message. Do you all know that this message can be a God instead of speaking this message on behalf of God? This message to me can be more important than the God that wants to give a message to all of us. Maybe you're sitting here and you felt called at one time to pursue something, a job, a career, a class, start a small group, be in a Sunday school class, and you felt like tons of joy and peace about that decision. You knew that God was a part of it. But now, fast forward a little time later, all you see is stress and fear that is paralyzing. And you wonder where that joy and peace is. Could it be that that thing has taken priority over the God that gave that thing? Could it be that at times we can worship a creation and not worship a creator? And they become many gods for us. Jesus goes on. This gets really cool. So he says this in the next verse. The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? Basically, he's saying the eyes are the gateways to the soul. And what we see and think and do and feel, if they're good, our character will display that goodness. But if they're evil and corrupt, our character will display that as well. Almost, once again, he's like hitting us over the head. Singleness of purpose, just a purpose to put God and eternal things first. And it sounds simple, but it's so hard to do because every person here, when you walked in here and I said, what's your priority in your life? We're all churched enough to say God is number one. But that's much different than really in my life for him actually in my heart and my mind and in my treasures for him to really be the focus. And then the last passage here, Jesus has finished his thoughts. No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate one and love the other, or you'll be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. And so money here really means money god or materialism. It doesn't mean cash in particular, but just possessions in general is what it means. I want you all to do something, and it's going to require some exercise. You don't have to do this if you don't want to stand up. But I'm going to ask you to find somebody next to you. Can you help me, Mike, real fast? You don't have to say anything. And you're going to get back to back with them. Everybody stand up, and you're going to interlock arms like this, okay? And then I want one of you to head in one direction, and the other person, okay, I'm going to go this way, and you go the other direction. You head in the other direction. You're going the other direction. Everybody do it. Everybody stand up. Let's try it just for a second. Do not sprain an ankle. All right. Let's do it. Thank you. All right. Now, unless you're a bodybuilder or you picked a 3-year-old to be on the other side, that is not easy. Yeah, I see what you did. That's not easy. And so Jesus, that's what he's saying in this passage. You can't have two masters. You cannot serve wholeheartedly the cross and wholeheartedly the things of earth. You can't serve and treasure heaven and serve an idol or a trophy. You just can't do it. What happens is you end up neutral. You don't go anywhere. You exert all of this energy in your life, and there's no effectiveness. There's no product. You don't go anywhere. And that's what he's saying in this passage. You can't have two masters. So are you stressed this morning? You can have two bosses. People have two bosses sometimes at work. You can't have two masters. You can't be devoted to both of them 100% at the same time. You can have a job and be going to school, or have two jobs or 3 jobs and 2 kids and a spouse. You can have 4 dogs, 3 cats, 2 horses, and a partridge in a pear tree if you want. But you can only have one God. You can only have one focus. Otherwise, you find lack of peace. So if you want to idolize this morning something, idolize the cross. Don't gain the whole world and lose your soul. Don't profit all of these things that life has to offer, but lose the peace that God has to offer. And so, as we conclude as an invitation, so I have this reputation, I guess, for giving out souvenirs a little bit. And there's reasons before. I personally remember things more if I have a visual reminder, if I take action, or if I make a decision or learn something, it's easier for me to have a visual reminder. So a lot of you got these when you walked in. You felt like you were winning the Oscars, and you got an Oscar, and you've taken this trophy, and sitting there, you've already named it. You've decided where you're going to put it on your mantle. You've already Snapchatted a photo with it, maybe, in the service. Here's the deal. I'm taking these back this morning. Seriously. You don't get to keep these. I'm going to keep them. I really am. I'm going to ask you to give these back. And now you're thinking, okay, why? What in the world are you going to do with 250 trophies? I'll tell you what I'm going to do with 250 trophies. I have no clue what I'm going to do with 250 trophies, but I'm not letting you take them home. Now, maybe coming up to an altar and dropping off a trophy at the altar isn't your thing, and that's okay. A lot of people, that's not their thing. And maybe you just want to slide it under your seat and leave it there. That's okay. Maybe you are so obsessed with this trophy, you have to take it home. If you do, stick it in your purse. I don't want to see it leave this place, okay? It'll be like the candy you sneak into the movie theater or the silverware that grandma steals from the restaurant every time. But don't let me see you take this home, okay? Because this, too many times I come to a church service and I decide that this is hurting me, keeping me from God, and then 5 minutes later, whatever it is that this represents, I still got it. So this is a visual reminder that you don't get to take this souvenir home with you this morning. Now, I will say this though. I don't want to trivialize this morning. Sacrifice is the hardest thing to do. Letting go of something that doesn't belong to us, that never belonged to us, that is the hardest thing in life to do. Something that at some point had so much promise that we thought was good for us, but now we realize it's very unhealthy for us. Wow. Something that we've spent most of our lives sacrificing for, giving to, loving, worshiping with our time and our effort. Wow. I'm asking you to betray a God. Betraying a God is not easy. To betray a false God, an idol. And it's not as simple as putting a cheap trophy on a wooden altar. It's not that easy. As I was sitting there, I read Matthew 6 one more time. I've read it so many times. Just this morning, God, is there anything else in there? And I read it again. Don't store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and vermin destroy, where thieves break in and steal. And I felt like God say something to me. Now, I'll tell you, I'm not the person that always says God says this to me. I think a lot of times we attribute things to God that aren't of God. So I like to be really careful when I say that. But I felt like something was impressed on me. And that was the word destroy. Felt like God was saying, Josh, not only will moth and vermin destroy your treasures, your idols will destroy you. If this becomes your pursuit, whatever it is, and I go after that with all my might, maybe in the moment, maybe over the course of a year or a lifetime, this will suck the life out of me. Because it's a temporary placeholder for that which only God, real life, the eternal, can hold in my life. And so this morning, all is not lost, okay? I'm going to redeem myself. You get something. I have crosses. So at this altar, little crosses, keychain wooden crosses. And let's not forget the cheesy implication for a second and think about this. Think how powerful it is in our life if this does represent exchanging a trophy for a cross. How cool is that? Exchanging something that will always be destroyed, will always be taken away. My dad's already cleaning out my trophy case with that Mustang All-Star trophy at home. When are you coming back to get it? Because I'm throwing it away. These go away, but something that lasts forever. Something that no one, these characteristics of God, Christ himself, no one can take away. That's super powerful. And then imagine this. What can life be like if this is no longer taking away our peace? Imagine this. What could you do for God's kingdom, for God, if the same energy, time, passion, devotion, money that you spent running hard after this, you spent running hard after him? Imagine that life. Imagine that world. And so what we're going to do logistically is, in a second, Leslie's going to appear on the screen, and she's going to do communion via Skype this morning, which will be really cool. And I'm going to ask you, you don't have to, but to come forward with your trophy, take communion, take God in place of the trophy, and leave it at the altar if you want, and take a cross as a reminder of something eternal. So, different kind of invitation. I've become numb to sacrifice types of sermons, like give it all up, let it go, leave it all at the altar, because for me, that's a very self-centered kind of message. For me, the problem in my life is not just that there's too much of me. The problem in my life is there's not enough of him. And when I read this passage in Matthew, Jesus doesn't just say, stop storing up treasures on earth. He says, but here's the purpose. Store up for yourselves treasures in heaven. God doesn't say don't have other gods. He says don't have other gods, priorities other than me. So there's a purpose to sacrifice. Trophies aren't bad just because they're trophies. They're bad because they're gods, because they're idols. There is nothing wrong with an awesome family and relationship, an awesome job that you want to go to every day, or shooting that 13-point buck, or your fantasy football team winning. There's nothing wrong with that. What becomes wrong is when that takes the place for God. Then it destroys us. It destroys us. And so this morning, I ask you to replace this with this, because for me, if I give this up and I don't replace it with something else, within a day or a week, I'm replacing it with a different trophy, or I'm taking that trophy back. And so this morning, literally as this image, God is not a God who wants to steal our trophies or take away everything we've went after. There's a purpose to sacrifice. We lose so that we can gain. We run from false idols so that we can pursue the real God. We empty ourselves so we can be filled. And we stop pursuing the temporary so that we can have the eternal. This morning, let's take off the jacket that suffocates us, that consumes us, and just really breathe real life that comes from a real God. In his name, amen.